Welcome back to the Fanalyst YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. Thank you for finding us. This is where creators and the community connect, the new arena for sports content. My guest today is Taylor Mathis. You can find her on Twitter at that little Twitter handle that she put there on the screen, but also on Instagram at CHI Sports Chick. That's at CHI Sports Chick. And she's got the football. She does all of her interviews from that football field. Really, just
most of the time.
we sent her out to Soldier Field. That's basically where we sent her. She's somewhere between the 15 and the 20. That's a pass that Andy Dalton could not make it's into the end zone. But what we're going to talk about today is kind of a sort of a new wave here that is picked up over the past few years and how she got into it, which is obviously sports gambling is exploding everywhere across the country. It's being legalized in more and more states. We've seen the fantasy apps move into gambling. Obviously, there are other gambling apps that are all over the place. Even in Illinois, I know they're trying to put it in the stadium itself. So it's going to be everywhere. And Taylor is on the forefront of this. You can find her content pretty much any place you look. I mean, she's on 5 Reasons Sports, but at about 12 other places. Before we get to how you got into this and kind of where you want to go, how many different outlets do you and places do you contribute content to right now?
Three okay. Right now. So just three.
Feels like more. It's all day long. All right. But that's part of this, right? I mean, when we talk to Fanalyst, it's getting your stuff out to as many places as possible and getting feedback and getting interest and putting it on social media. So let's get into sort of how you started at this. I mean, were you always into gambling? I mean, were you in high school like playing like, I don't know, the ponies at recess and stuff like that?
No, you know what? So I went to the University of Iowa for sports journalism. So that's what my degree is in. And I kind of started on the normal path that a lot of sports broadcasters do. I started in local TV doing sports. So I was at a station in Iowa and then I moved to Nebraska and I covered sports there. So I'm a big Big Ten girl because I went to Iowa from Illinois, lived in Nebraska. So I've covered like all the Big Ten teams, but went to Nebraska, covered sports at a local station there. Then I got my first opportunity to kind of move into the digital space from a company in Dallas. And I covered a lot of NFL and did that. And I was splitting my time between, I live in Arizona now, so I was in between Arizona and Dallas. Then I moved to working for a company doing digital reporting for the Suns out here for 2 seasons. Then COVID hit. And also a lot of people think that I'm like in my early 20s. So I haven't been in the industry for that long, but I'm actually almost 30. So I've been doing this for quite a while. But I got my first opportunity with gambling from a company called Bet Karma. They reached out to me during COVID about getting into the gambling space and doing some social content and reporting and all that kind of stuff for them. And I was like, I think this might be the direction that the sports world is going to be moving. And I might as well get into it at the forefront when it's starting. So I got into it and I knew absolutely nothing about gambling. And I have just taught myself over the last year and really dove into the space.
So how do you teach yourself in gambling? Like, did you have a mentor or someone who worked with you on that?
I just pretty much was like, gambling 101, gambling for dummies. Like, how do I get into sports betting? And I just read as many articles as I could. And I will say I have a couple mentors like in the journalism and sports space. One of them has become very big in the gambling space. So occasionally I would do calls with him and he would like quiz me and be like, okay, like explain, against the spread to me, explain what a run line is, kind of just giving me like learning the basics and really trying to understand odds, everything like that, how line movement works, kind of helped me there. But for the most part, I did a lot of it on my own, just reading online and practicing basically.
So what are the differences for a man getting into your space and a woman getting into your space?
I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both. I think one advantage of being a woman going into the gambling space is it's not as saturated for females. It's obviously an area that a lot of men already have previously been in before it was even legalized and they were enjoying sports betting. So being a woman, I may get recognized a little bit more for being in the space because there's not as many of us. But I think we face the same challenges that we always have in the sports journalism industry. Guys assuming that you're only in the space because of your looks, or you're not as knowledgeable because you're a female, and you might have to work just that much harder because there are fewer spots for us girls when it comes to getting a content spot at, one of the biggest sports books or something like that. They're hiring a lot more men before they are hiring a lot of women. There's usually like one female face per show or sports book or something like that. So it does require a little bit more work, and I think you have to be just a little bit more on top of your game. But there are some advantages. I feel like being a woman in the space, you might grow a little bit faster on social media than a lot of these like male Twitter cappers and things like that. So there are pros and cons, as there are with everything.
Well, how do you deal with that? So when you get the comment back, what does she know? I mean, how do you handle that? Because I know women in my network have sort of taken an approach to that, which is that they kind of just go back a lot of times at the men who do that, and the men recoil. They're not anticipating that. But it seems to be like you do a little of that, but you also sort of let a lot of it go and just kind of move on.
I do. Well, I learned very early in the industry when I was in Nebraska. I will never forget this because it was something that's like stuck with me. I was anchoring that night. It was like our 5 or 6 o'clock show, doing sports. And we had a viewer, a older like female, actually write in saying that like the dress I was wearing, it wasn't inappropriate, but I shouldn't be standing to the side because of the way my my figure is. Inappropriate. And I remember my news director calling me in. He's like, we have to tell you this regardless of anything because it's a viewer complaint. And I remember like going in my car and calling my mom, and I was bawling. And I was just like, this lady said this. And I remember my mom just telling me, well, Taylor, if you want to be in this industry, the bigger and more that you build your platform, the more haters that you're going to have, and you've just got to brush it off. And that is something that I've definitely stuck with majority of the time, with especially the amount of men that are just absolutely ridiculous online with things that they say. I just don't even reply to it. There are occasionally, especially if people are trying to call me out on like a record or saying that I'm lying about something, I will step back at them because I'm like, no. This is how slightly, we're making a livelihood. Yes, I'm making content. It's not always about if you win or lose, but I don't want somebody to like question my integrity and say that I'm not being truthful. So like yesterday, I had a guy say, your Monday Night Football bets did not go 6-0 because of what you posted on your story. And I was like, hold up. I gave 2 bets on my story. The other 2 that were on the screen were not something that I was taking. They were just on the screen. I didn't take those bets. And basically I was like, I just have to come back at him with this, because if he's going to try to tell me I was 4-2 when I actually wasn't, I'm going to be annoyed by it. So I will definitely like clap back at things like that. But if somebody's going to make a jab at like my appearance or something silly about what I'm wearing or things like that, like I'm just going to let it go, brush it off.
So where does this go now, Taylor? Now that we are seeing, again, more and more states open up and more of these betting platforms, it almost feels like people aren't really watching the games for the games anymore. It's for fantasy and it's for gambling. But it does seem to me like you entered this space at the right time. It has the most growth of everything else. So if I was to say to you, where does this go? And if I was to say Taylor Mathis in 5 years is going to be here, where do you envision your career going?
Well, I'm like right now, I'm very big on goal writing. That's something that I've always been big on. I do my monthly goals and my yearly goals. And I decided at the beginning of this year, when I got into the gambling space, my goal by the end of 2021 is I would like to exclusively be working with a sports book doing content. And I am, fingers crossed, on the right track right now. So I'm hoping within this next week, I have exciting news. But that is like my goal in the short term. In the long term, I would think I would like to still be doing something potentially with the sports book. I've always said my long-term goal is I would love to work for Barstool at some point. They are like who I want to work for. And a lot of people are like, oh, Barstool. Like, why would you want to work for Barstool? I just feel like with my personality, and I'm the type that I don't want to be so cookie cutter and buttoned up per se, and I want to be able to have somewhat of a personality. I feel like they're creative and they allow you to do that, and they're very big in the gambling space as well. So I would like to say within 5 years, maybe I'm on a track to go along with that, or potentially somewhere else that's going to give me the ability to create content and be myself while also spouting out sports knowledge too. So,
well, that's what it's all about. I mean, that should have been our motto at Fanalyst. People who want to create content and spout knowledge. I feel like that's what they all want to do. Before we close, I just want to make clear on one thing. Taylor's picks are real. And they're spectacular. And I can speak to this specifically because she's currently winning our Thursday night contest. I've been about 4 to 5 games back the entire season, but I will catch you. Maybe not by the time that this airs, but I am going to catch you by the end of the season.
I'm not letting up on you guys. I'm going 2-0 this week. I've
22-8 as we speak. 22-8. Those picks are real, and as I said, they're spectacular. Taylor, we appreciate it. Follow her at CA. I always think you're in Chicago when you're actually in Arizona.
I'm from Chicago. But
well, the accent. It's the accent and the color of the sweater and all the rest of that stuff. It screams Mike Ditka. But yes, you're actually living in Arizona. Thank you, Taylor. We appreciate it. And where can they follow your work other than 5 Reasons Sports?
TMath11792 is my Twitter, and Shy Sports Chick is my Instagram. So, and Bet Karma and Awesemo, 2 areas where I put out a lot of content.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.